Welcome to the UFC London prop drop, going over every single matchup as briefly as possible, but also pointing out the props I like for every single matchup, whether it's for the opponent that I'm picking to win, or if there are some odds on the opposite side in terms of a prop that catch my eye enough to mention to you guys, whether it's for a hedge opportunity or just straight up bet it because it's damn good. So let's take a dive into that right now. So let's get right into it. First fight up, we got Kutateladze going up against Fernandes. I really think that Kutateladze could be very effective with his Muay Thai, maybe cut up Fernandes, but I'd kind of be surprised if he's able to put him away. Thus, I think he actually ends up winning this fight on the scorecards because I think the majority of his game plan will take place with the grappling, shutting down the BJJ black belt of Fernandes, out-scrambling him and keeping him on his back, and you can get Kutateladze to win by decision at plus 100. On the flip side, one line that really stands out to me is Fernandes by submission at plus 1,700. You know, if there is a very high-paced fight, we've seen Gurm slow down in the past, and I wouldn't be surprised if Fernandes is able to snatch up a submission after a poor takedown attempt from Gurm in deep water here. So Fernandes by sub plus 1,700, probably the hedge spot that most people are looking to take advantage of. Next up, Nathan Fletcher going up against Loughran. I am on the Loughran side here. You know, I know this is a rematch of an amateur fight that took place 5+ years ago, but I think that Loughran has very much improved his game, and I think it's the perfect style to try to thwart the BJJ style of Fletcher. The majority of Fletcher's wins have come by submission, although he had to go to the scorecards against Loughran. I think Loughran showed some decent things in that fight where he was able to utilize his physicality, but now knowing how to utilize that physicality with some technique as well should be able to shut down the Fletcher game. Fletcher's also very uncomfortable in the striking realm, and that's where he starts to slow down when he can't have success. And it's not like Loughran is some crazy Floyd Mayweather type striker either, but I think his physicality and ability to bully and dictate the pace could cause Fletcher a lot of trouble here. I think that Loughran is, not the best in terms of finishing guys. So I think he actually ends up grinding this matchup out, which you can currently get Loughran by decision at plus 230. And then on the flip side for Fletcher, the most amount of wins that he has come by submission, and you can get his submission prop at plus 550. Next up, Shauna Bannon going up against Tomar. Probably the fight that I'm looking forward to least this entire calendar year. Let's be honest. It has no stakes on it. Both a very low-level fighter here. Both women like to utilize a lot of footwork, a lot of blitzing attacks with not a lot of power on them. Bannon by decision, minus 120 is kind of the prediction I would go with here. I think she uses her hands a little bit more effectively. Puja a little bit more reliant on her kicks. And Tomar obviously, kind of accepts the back foot a little bit more than she should. The spot that kind of jumps out to me here is actually Shauna Bannon by submission at plus 1,500. Now, she doesn't have a submission win on her record. Puja has 2 losses by submission on her record, even though they were like 7 years ago. But I think Bannon is quite active in the grappling realm, or at least with her submissions if they ever find themselves there. And if she really wants to separate herself from Tomar in this fight, I think she should engage in the grappling realm, and from there she could be able to snatch up a submission. And again, at plus 1,500 for that possibility, a little bit of a sprinkle might be warranted here. All right, next up, Christian Leroy Duncan going up against Andre Pulyaev. Pulyaev earned his contract with the Contender Series this past season by pulling off an upset over Liam Anderson. But I think that Leroy Duncan just so much better than Pulyaev. Quicker, faster with the punches, more power in his shots as well. I think that this is a spot that kind of looks like the Claudio Ribeiro fight for Duncan, where he just wears Pulyaev down in the clinch and then eventually finds that knockout in the second or third round. Just because Pulyaev is Russian doesn't mean he can grapple, as we've seen him get out grappled in the past. He's more of a unorthodox striker that loves to utilize spinning techniques and kicks to the body. But look for Duncan to shut that down with dictating the pace, commanding the respect from Pulyaev after landing his power, and then eventually finding the knockout. You can get Duncan round 2 knockout at plus 450, Duncan round 3 knockout at plus 650. Again, specific props like that, you would hope for at least 4-digit plus money. But again, I think the public is kind of privy that that's likely how Duncan ends up getting his hand raised here. On the flip side for Pulyaev, by decision, plus 850. If he's able to get some success going, he probably gets some control time up against the cage or even chips away at Duncan. But I still think that Duncan is the better fighter here, and I think he eventually gets the knockout. Our next up, Mick Parkin going up against Marcin Tybura. A bit of a passing of the torch fight here in the heavyweight division. Obviously, Tybura a little bit older now, obviously. And it seems like he struggles against guys that have athletic advantages against him. Guys that could stop the takedowns or guys that can dictate the pace with the striking. And I think that's what he's going to be facing here with Mick Parkin. I think Parkin will put together a better body of work, whether it's with his striking or his grappling that not a lot of people have seen yet, actually. But I think that Parkin touches up Tybura here, and I think he wins this fight on the scorecards. You can currently get the decision prop at plus 230 for Parkin. On the flip side for Tybura, it's plus 240. If Tybura wins, that's probably the way. And then, again, if you want to get a little bit risky with it, maybe Parkin by knockout at plus 340. Being knocked out by a guy like Augusto Sakai, maybe Tybura's chin doesn't show up here. Maybe Parkin's able to land that big shot and follow up that Lucas Dresky knockout that he got back in July by knocking out the veteran Tybura here. But again, my favorite prop for this matchup is going to be by decision for Mick Parkin at plus 230. All right, next up, Loney Kavanagh going up against Felipe dos Santos. Fun fight here between two guys that love to bring the heat and love to bring the action, but I think it's going to be difficult for Kavanagh to put dos Santos away. I expect this to be a little bit of a war, but I ultimately think Kavanagh will come out on top by decision, which you can currently get at minus 115. On the flip side, I think there are times where Kavanagh could get clipped that Dos Santos might be able to take advantage of, and you can get Dos Santos by knockout at plus 1,000. Not a bad line as a possible head spot, but I look for Kavanagh to be a little bit cleaner, a little bit nastier, and land with more damage, and ultimately win this fight on the scorecards. On the next fight here, we got Jai Herbert going up against Chris Padilla. Herbert, obviously getting better in terms of his striking defense. It's been a while since we've seen him get knocked out, as that's been kind of the issue that a lot of people have been harping on as of late. He's been defeating some heavy punchers like, why am I escaping? Rolando Bedoya was the last guy that he beat, who's a heavy puncher, obviously. Even the fight before that against Ludwig Klein, I know it went to a draw, but that was a fight that I believe Herbert should have won by decision. I don't think that point deduction in the third round was necessary. I thought there was some good acting skills on the Ludwig Klein side to get the point taken away, but I think that Herbert showcased in those fights that he can stay safe at distance and utilize his combination striking style, his sniper-like style to pick opponents apart and win fights on the scorecards, which is what I expect him to do here against Chris Padilla. You can get that prop at plus 190 on Padilla. On the flip side, we know what Padilla's best path to victory here is. Try to land that big shot on Herbert and put him away. You can currently get Padilla by knockout at plus 400. All right, moving on to the next fight. We got Nathaniel Wood going up against Morgan Charriere. Fun competitive matchup, and I was kind of surprised to see Charriere, closer to that minus 180 range earlier this week. Now he's down to minus 130, and I think people are starting to buy into the fact that Wood might be the technically superior fighter and a guy that might be able to look better for the judges. You can get Wood to win by decision at plus 200, and then on the flip side, you can get Charriere to win by decision at plus 165. Look for Wood to mix the martial arts perfectly here and at least win two of these rounds to get his hand raised on the scorecards. Plus 200, not too bad. On top of that plus 110 money line, you can still currently get on Nathaniel Wood. All right, next up, Jordan Vucenic going up against Chris Duncan. I love Vucenic. Kind of surprised he's this big of a favorite. I think he's getting that rub after that performance he had against Kutateladze in his short notice UFC debut. Chris Duncan, criminally underrated throughout his career, can definitely make this fight competitive, but I think this is a fight that actually goes into deep water. The fight to start round 3 currently sits at minus 120, which I don't mind at all. Vucenic to win by decision plus 220. If Vucenic does get the submission, I think it comes in deep water. You can get a submission prop at plus 200, or you can get Vucenic round 3 submission at plus 1300. But I think it's ultimately going to be the Vucenic by decision at plus 220 that earns him the victory. All right, next up, Alexia Thainara going up against Molly McCann. I love Thainara in this spot. I wish it wasn't as short notice as it is. I think it's about 2.5 to 3 weeks notice. But knowing she already has a UFC contract after a Contender Series winning performance against Rose Conceição, I don't think she would have taken this matchup unless she was prepared for it. So I'm going to believe in the fact that she's prepared for it. And I think from there, we'll see her utilize her pace and high pressure style, which will ultimately keep McCann on the defensive. And I think that will eventually lead to Thainara landing takedowns and grinding McCann out. Thainara by decision plus 135 is what I'm leaning on here. If you want to get risky, maybe Thainara by submission at plus 430. But I think we'll see good enough defenses here from McCann to stay from getting shut out or stay from getting submitted. But I think that we'll see her on the defensive for the most part and lose this fight on the scorecards. On the flip side for McCann, for her to win, I think it comes by decision, which you can currently get at plus 310. But I'm going to go Thainara by decision as my favorite prop. All right, next up. Gunnar Nelson going up against Kevin Holland. I think this is a bad stylistic matchup for Holland, as I think Nelson can do a good enough job in terms of staying competitive in the striking realm. He's not a schlub there by any means, has a solid and effective kick karate style. I think that will eventually lead to him crashing the pocket and getting the body lock and dragging Holland to the ground, and then showcasing that there are clear levels to this BJJ black belt game, and that will lead to Nelson eventually wrapping up a submission and getting the tap, which you can currently get at plus 220. On the flip side, I think if Holland wins, it's likely looking like him picking apart Nelson from distance, shutting down the grappling game, getting off on his own damage, and winning this fight on the scorecards, which you can currently get at plus 470. But I'm going to go Nelson and Nelson by sub at plus 220. All right, co-main event time. We got Jan Blachowicz returning after about a year and a half away from action, taking on Carlos Ulberg. Now, Blachowicz's last fight was actually the first fight that Alex Pereira had up at light heavyweight in the UFC. And we know, obviously, Blachowicz ended up losing that fight by split decision, and now he's been nursing a shoulder injury ever since and looking to return at 42 years old. I think that this is a fight that Ulberg should be able to keep standing, utilizing his striking advantage, utilizing his, I believe, 8-year youth advantage, and obviously showcasing some improved takedown defense. I think a lot of this fight will be eaten up in the clinch, but ultimately it'll be Ulberg landing the more damaging shots, which will earn him the decision victory here at plus 160. But on the flip side, for Blachowicz, by decision, plus 470. If he gets his takedowns going, he could probably grind this out. But also, if he gets his takedowns going, he might be able to wrap up a submission, which you can currently get at plus 1900. Blachowicz is a BJJ black belt, right? And if you want to look to take advantage of a city kickboxing product, it's by taking them to the ground and smothering them from that top position. So I think Blachowicz by sub is definitely worth a consideration at that crazy line. But I think it's ultimately Ulberg that wins this fight by decision at plus 160. All right, main event time, welterweight high-stakes matchup here with former champion Leon Rocky Edwards taking on rising contender Sean Brady. Now, I think this is a fight that we'll see Edwards showcase that takedown defense as we saw in the Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington fights. And people might harp on that because of the Bilal Muhammad fight, who was able to go 9 of 13 on takedowns against Edwards. But just as we saw when Bilal fought Brady, Bilal implements this high-pressure, high-volume style that masks his takedowns very well and breaks his opponents down. I think Edwards will be able to take advantage of the, un-Bilal-like wrestling style of Brady, because Brady should be able to land a few takedowns early here, but I think it's going to get harder and harder for him to implement that style and keep Edwards on his back. I think that ultimately leads this fight hitting the scorecards, and I think it's going to be Edwards who lands more damage in more rounds to eventually get his hand raised there. You can get him to win by decision at plus 240, and then for Brady, you can get him to win by decision at plus 160. My long shot theory for this matchup specifically is going to be Edwards round 4 KO plus 3,900, round 5 KO plus 4,600. If Brady starts slowing down the way that he did against Bilal, which I don't think is really going to happen, he'll be ripe for the picking, just as Bilal was able to get his lone finish in the UFC against Brady because of how much Brady started to slow down. I think Edwards will pick him apart on the feet, but he will be a little bit too hesitant to let go too much, which will ultimately lead to this being a little bit more of a sprawl and brawl type of matchup, which ultimately leads to the scorecards. And again, the hometown kid getting his hand raised here by decision at plus 240. All right, let's get into the top 3 prop bets that I got and the long shot. Not much that I'm liking a whole lot in terms of props, but let's see if we can hit 1 or 2 in this spot. First one up, Loughran by decision plus 230. Second one, Mick Parkin by decision plus 230. Third one, Alexia Thainara by decision plus 135. And the long shot that I'm going to go with, again, not many long shots that I'm liking for this card. So we're going to go super conspiracy theory here. We're going to go Shauna Bannon by submission plus 1,500. Again, I haven't had the best luck with my long shots this year. Obviously, we profited pretty well last year on them. Let's see if we can get a good one here and get back into the profit. So yeah, there you guys go. All right, that's my content for the week for UFC London, not to mention Cage Warriors, which is just about to wrap up now, and then LFA going down tomorrow. All of that good stuff can be found on the YouTube page. If you want my track plays and written breakdowns for these cards, you guys can check out the Patreon page. Link for that in the description below. That is the Lock of the Night Patreon page, not to be mistaken with the MMA Fight Archive. So when you are signing up, just make sure you differentiate the two depending on what you're looking for. And yeah, I'll be back on Sunday to break down the UFC Mexico card, headlined by a flyweight tilt between Brandon Moreno and Steve Erceg. Fun matchup, fun fight card all around. Can't wait to break it down for you guys. Good luck on all your action this weekend, folks. See you guys Sunday. Peace.